Welcome to the Fitchburg Municipal Airport, December 21st, 2022, Airport Commission meeting. It's around 6 o'clock.
6:02. 6:02.
Commissioners in attendance, to my right, Richie Liberatore, myself, Chair, Clayton Raymond, Beth Walsh, and Peter Genesi.
David Genesi, but that's okay, thank you.
I'm sorry?
It's David,
David.
Mr. Chair.
And then Peter Kettle to my right.
It's the holidays, we'll let it slide.
Good. Also, members, ex officio member, Stephen D. Natale, Mayor, City of Fitchburg. And looks like we have FPA group in attendance, and going to begin. If anybody would like to speak on any item that's not on tonight's agenda, you can stand, state where you're from, town is fine, and you have a couple minutes to make a statement. But if it's on the agenda, you don't have to do so, and we'll just see you when that item comes up. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on item not on the agenda? I'm going to go with a no. Thank you. Item number one is action items from previous minutes. I don't believe we have a lot to go through that's not going to be covered. Peter, you got anything on that?
No, everything is on this agenda, but you didn't approve the previous minutes.
Yeah. And I skipped previous month's minutes approval, including special meeting minutes, if there was one, which there was not. So I'm looking for a motion, or is anyone that would motion to accept November's meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Vote, yay?
Aye.
4-0. Thank you. Correspondence to the commission. It's a yes. We have, going to cover that on item one in new business?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Moving on. Gail's review of ongoing work, A and B. Matt, are you with us now? Can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and good evening. Good evening, members of the Fitchburg Airport Commission. Matt Karen with Gale Associates. Not a very robust update this month, so I do appreciate everyone allowing me to jump on and join online via Zoom this month. I appreciate that. Excuse me. Couple items I do want to go over are the airport master plan. So at this point in time, we've submitted the final reimbursement requests to the FAA and Mass DOT. We're just waiting for FAA approval and release of the final payment on that project. Otherwise, that project is done and complete. The environmental assessment and wildlife hazard assessment, we've been staying in contact with FAA. We're waiting for them to fund that project and release the BIL funds so that we can start in on that project. Our last follow-up with them was about a week ago, and they still did not have a timeline of when those funds were going to be released. I'm assuming at this point it'll be sometime after the new year. Looking at your agenda for this evening, there's the standby generator. I don't have anything to add on that. I don't know if Peter has an update, but at this point in time, that is with Mass DOT and the airport.
Yeah, just a comment, Matt, please. With respect to the standby generator, no, nothing to add. But there's a company called Convergent Energy that would like to come and make a presentation to the Airport Commission. They actually build blocks of battery cells, and I'm wondering if that could take the place of a standby generator if we got one of those cells down here. What it does is actually buy electricity at the cheapest rate, which is, I believe, from 11 o'clock at night until 5 in the morning, and it stores it in there in case we ever had a shutdown. Then Convergent Energy could supply the electricity to run the airport. So that's one thing that I'd just like to, get looked at.
Have you asked them, Peter, if that's something that they could implement that would take place of the generator?
I haven't asked them specifically, but they do want to come down because of the vacant land that we have for non-aeronautical. And they'd put
Okay,
it into
cool.
the grid. So I will make that contact, Matt, and keep you in the loop, all right?
Yeah, please do. Anything you need from me, certainly let me
All
know.
right. Thank you.
The only other item that I see on the agenda for this evening is the CIP meeting, the permit and design for Main Apron. So as everyone may recall, we tried to work with the FAA and Mass DOT to fund the reconstruction of the Main Apron. They did not have the funds available in fiscal year 2024 to fund that project. So we were going to do a design-only grant for that. But since they don't have the funds programmed in federal fiscal year 2024, we're going to defer that until next year. So we will revisit that project with FAA and Mass DOT at their CIP meeting, likely sometime in August, September of 2023. And I would ask if there's any questions on any of the projects that I updated the commission on this evening.
Matt, I have one question. The airport master plan, it has been approved, correct? There's not going to change from this point forward.
No, the master plan's approved, airport layout plan's been submitted, reviewed by the FAA, approved by the FAA. We're just waiting for the final closeout payment on that project.
Okay. Anyone else?
No, good.
We're good.
Okay, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman, I'll
Matt.
be here in the background. If you need me for anything, just holler and I'll jump back on. I appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you. Item 4, Fitchburg Pilots Association.
There was nothing to report from the Pilots Association, but they did request to be included in the old business under item D, which is the minimum standards. And the guys are here tonight, so
Okay, so they just want to speak on behalf?
yes.
Okay. We're just gonna move on to, we're just gonna go in order then. New business. Item 1, also correspondence to the commission. Derek Boudreau?
Yes, I received an email from Derek Boudreau on a hangar inquiry. He said, "Good afternoon. I'm looking to build a hangar at an airport in the coming year for a business venture. I want to embark on and would like to know how I would go about building one at K-Fit. I know you recently closed down runway 0220, and I was also wondering what your plans are for the land in that area, because I would also like to build some more T hangars to rent out if possible. Thank you." Which is another person inquiring into the land use. I went back to him saying, "Good afternoon, Derek. Many thanks for your email inquiry at the Fitchburg Municipal Airport. We have just completed our updated airport master plan, which has indicated that the old runway 0220 and area surrounding it is ideally suited to have a new hangar or hangars development at the airport, including T hangars. We're currently talking with a group of people interested in building 7 to 9 4,000 plus square feet hangars within the area you allude to in your email, plus one individual who is looking to build a 40 to 45,000 square foot hangar going forwards. Every month we have a commission meeting where these types of developments are presented to the Airport Commission, and I will be doing that on the 21st of December commission meeting on your behalf. However, you are very welcome to attend and make the proposal yourself. Just advise me accordingly. Please advise how we'd like to proceed." And he said for me to go ahead, and he will, work to what we decide to do. We need to get some RFPs out now that we're almost ready, and it's been approved by the FAA. So, and this is actually tied in with a letter that I got from Eric Sheffels as well as we move forwards.
Okay. I got a comment.
Please.
Do you think that the commission should ask the city council for monies to build T hangars prior to us going out with an RFP, or do you think that's a dead issue?
Personal opinion, I do, because it's a moneymaker.
I thought we discussed that before, and we wanted to move forward on that.
We did, and we were waiting for the airport master plan to be completed.
Yeah.
So we're at that juncture point
We've had
now.
that discussion a year or so ago,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, 2 years from now, and somebody else puts 10 T hangers out there and, making money profitable in the next 20 years, and the city hall is going to be like, hey, how come we didn't do that? And they're going to say, well, commission never asked us. So I think it would behoove us to, ask.
Yeah, we pretty much wanted to make sure that we had all our ducks in a row, how we were going to progress with the new construction and how everything was going to be laid out. And then when the master plan started to be developed, we wanted to go to the city council and say, we have a clear picture of what we want to do. And we didn't want them to pick away at it and
Right.
and question us over it. So we definitely, this is almost the time now that to approach them.
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask you a question. We don't know exactly how much money it would cost to put up, 7 to 9 or a row of T hangers. How do we approach, figuring that? Do we ask for $1 million? Do we ask for $2 million, or is it, or?
Well, no, you'd have to do a pro forma, find out what the cost would be.
Yeah. And who does all that?
I don't know if Gail does that kind of thing. Does Gail, Matt, are you out there? I mean,
Yeah, I'm still out
could-
here. We can certainly put together cost estimates and everything.
Well,
for,
it's
like, the
a
design,
bid
bid,
process. It would be a bid
Correct.
process.
Yes.
Yeah, but we need a
We'd put an
foundation.
RFP out, and they would bid, different organizations would bid, and then you determine,
But Gail might have
unfortunately,
an
in
idea.
city government and state government, it's the low bidder.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that would be the way to start.
We have to spec it out. We have to know exactly what we want, and then they would bid on it. But we could already have that design implemented, and that all men don't.
Matt, you still with us?
Still here.
So can you get with Peter to begin that process?
Yeah, I can definitely work with Peter on certainly the whole design, permit, bid portion of it. What obviously is an unknown is the construction costs. I mean, that's something we would have to work with vendors that do that to get a ballpark estimate of what these things would cost, what it would cost for them to actually bid on it and construct it.
Matt, you've worked with Mary Delaney, the procurement officer, correct?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, well, I would want you to check with her before you do anything, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get with Peter and we'll start at step one.
Okay, good, thank you.
You got it.
That was my only comment. Any?
That makes sense.
No, that's a good point.
All right. Old business. Item A, GPU installation.
They're still planning that out. Christian Haynes, the electrical contractor, has unfortunately got COVID, and he's not very well at the moment, and he believes that he should be able to start within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. Item B, old business, Hangar 1 agreement.
Yeah, Hangar 1, I spoke to Rich Corley and Jake Woodford this afternoon about the current 20 plus 20 plus 20 year lease, and they're not prepared to sign it over that duration. Because of the economic climate at the moment, they would like to go with 5 plus 5 plus 5. We are currently doing that for Twin City Airmotive, and I spoke to Vinny, our attorney, about this afternoon as well, and he said no problem whatsoever. So as soon as Vinny completes his vacation, I'll have the documents ready and we'll push them around the city
Okay.
for signature.
So, I'm sorry, was it a 5-5?
5 plus 5 plus 5.
Yeah.
So we're preparing documents for them?
I will do that, yes.
Item C, old business, Twin City Airmotive agreement.
They're ready to sign. They are on the 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, but again, because of the economic situation at the moment, they would like a get-out clause put into the agreement, a 90-day notice. Again, I spoke to Attorney Pusatera, and he said, yes, they can do that, and he will put that into every single agreement going forwards.
Okay. Item D, old business, minimum standards. I read, I see that the minimum standards are now posted on the Fitchburg, City of Fitchburg website under the airport business. If anybody would like to comment, after the commission comments, we're gonna do that. So does anybody have any comment on the minimum standards that were posted on the city website? I have a copy. I'm out of ink now, but I have a copy.
Are those the revised minimum standards?
This is a draft of the revised minimum
Okay.
standards.
All right.
It's just really for public view and comment. We haven't got any comment, I don't believe, on, at City Hall, so,
Other than what's been portrayed at the last two meetings.
yes, yep. So anybody would like to speak on behalf of the minimum standards that were posted on the city website? Please come forward.
Thank you. Mark Estabrook, Acton, Massachusetts, president of FACT and member of the FPA. So, whoops. First of all, thank you for publishing the standards. We appreciate it. We've been asking for a bit, and we were happy to receive them, see them on site, on the website. So we've gone through them quickly. There are a lot of things to digest in there, so we'd formally like to ask for a 90-day period where we can provide more formal comments rather than something quickly. I think there's something in the document that says you need inputs by early January, which would be fairly challenging for us to do a good job reviewing. So we'd like to formally request the 90-day period from when it was published.
I'm going to ask the commission if they want to wait that long. Does anyone have an issue with waiting 90 more days to have the public review?
I don't have an
don't.
issue.
No, I mean, if they need the time to review it and.
Of course.
We do this right,
Yeah,
that, we need to do this right.
yeah,
So if there is much time as you need,
Thank you.
I'll all agree with that.
What do you mean,
Absolutely.
as much time as you need?
We won't
90
go past the
days.
90 days.
within reason.
As much time as you need, or 90 days,
Or 90
whichever
days,
comes
right.
first.
Thank you. So part
Take
two of
your
that.
time.
Part two of that question is how best to do this in working with the commission. There's a lot of detail inside that draft minimum standards. Do you want us to go line by line, or do you want us to go more high level and generic of these are the kinds of things we're looking for in the airport? And I can speak to some of those tonight, but we could certainly have a more thorough answer. So I'm just looking for the best way to engage with the commission on that back and forth, understanding that it's not just me. We have taken the past couple of weeks in trying to pull views in from all of our constituents.
I think it's what's most critical that affects you the most. Start with that, and we'll address those, you know? I'm sure within the standards, there's things that popping right out at you, and these are things we need to address.
Yep.
I'd start there.
Okay. And in terms of again, a point by point where we're editing the document, so to speak, or just high-level points, bullet points that we would make
Oh,
about?
you're going to highlight a point, then you're going to come back with your version of how you feel it should be best implemented.
Okay, so more of a point by point in the document.
I'm thinking that.
Okay. So part two of that same question, so we just understand where we're coming from and what we have to work with. Could you comment on what is general aviation's health and growth in terms of a priority for the commission? I know we have a very successful airport now in profitability, and a lot of that's driven by the business jets. We're trying to understand where we sit, whether we're at the top of your list or at the bottom of your list or somewhere in between in terms of priority for, again, a healthy and a growing general aviation population at Fitchburg Airport.
So the minimum standards have been in place for over 50 years. The last time they were updated was around 1978.
3.
73? There was not a lot of changes made to those. And I'd like to keep it to the point where doesn't change dramatically. You know, we were warned, or I should say, advised by the FAA to do these minimum standards ourselves. Because it's a city document. It's the city that stands to lose if, you know, we don't have minimum standards in place and things get chaotic. Now, you want 90 days to review and go back and forth, you know, we're already down that road. We're going to listen. I think personally my goal is to have the airport self-sustaining. Whether that comes from jet fuel, avgas, rent, it comes from everywhere. And I'd like to keep it that way. So I don't think that anyone has any thought that, you know, all general aviation is going to disappear and we're going to be corporate jets. That's not our goal. Our goal is to just keep everybody safe and on the same playing field without discrimination. So I don't know if Peter has any input onto, you know, what had changed on the minimum standards from 73 to now. That's a glaring item.
Well, basically, the main change was to the insurance liability coverage, as you know, Mark. What I did before, I didn't just pick up the old one and say, yeah, this is okay, let me change this, let me change that. I got a number of minimum standards from major airports within Massachusetts. I looked at them all. Every one of those was approved by MassDOT and the FAA. So what you're seeing in those new minimum standards is basically already approved from certain other airports.
For certain airports, yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, certain other airports.
Yeah.
And, you know, you heard my statement reference, why do we want to go to 2 million? There was a meeting last week, a MAMA meeting, and there was 63 people there from the airports in Massachusetts, plus the FAA top person, who's a lady named Gal Luttrell, and also the top person from MassDOT Aeronautics, who is Owen Silbau, and Dr. Jeff DiCarlo. And there was a vote on which way we should be moving to go forwards. And everybody, without hesitation, said, look, aeroplanes cost more, buildings cost more, we've got to revise the $1 million, it's not enough. And there was a vote taken, and the vote was $2 million. And if I could just also let you know,
Yep.
that there were 26 airports there, and their current insurance liability was 1 million, 3 million, 10 million, 25 million. The small airport like Pittsfield has a $25 million liability insurance cover. So when I made the proposal to the commission here, I didn't think I was being outlandish by upgrading to 2 million. Sure. Now, our attorney also has looked at this, and he's gone out to his contacts, and he sent me a letter that I actually received this morning. And he says, "Dear Mr. Kettle, is it okay if I read this?
Yes.
Kindly be advised that I conferred with the city's insurance advisor, Judith A. Kokinda of Albert Risk Management Solutions. Ms. Kokinda reviewed the issue in connection with whether or not the minimum standards at the airport should require service professionals to maintain insurance in order to supply services at the airport, and if so, what the amount of coverage should be. Ms. Kokinda indicated that insurances should be required and that she has seen coverage in the amount of $1 to $2 million. Recently, at the Massachusetts Airport Management Association MAMA meeting, it was confirmed that the trend is to require $2 million worth of coverage going forwards. Consequently, it would seem that our advisor agrees with the suggestion that there should be a requirement for insurance. Further, it is within reason to require $2 million worth of coverage, and in fact, $2 million of coverage is consistent with the trend within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Should you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. And that was from Attorney Pusateri.
Sure. And so now you understand my question about whether or not general aviation is a priority for Fitchburg Airport. So those are understandable, Peter, and I'm not saying that $2 million was made up out of the blue. I understand that there's a basis for that. I also understand that in contacting insurance companies, you will find you can't get it. It's just not insurance you can get for an independent operator. For an FBO, certainly you can. But for an independent operator that's coming on the field, they won't. So what will happen is that the few independent operators we have operating at Fitchburg Airport, and I can describe what those independent operators are, they won't be on the field any longer. So we will be limited in access of all services according to the current draft of the standards, not just maintenance, but all services, to people who can walk on with $2 million liability. So there's going to be a chilling effect on the general aviation operations at Fitchburg Airport if those policies go through. And I would argue, Peter, at Fitchburg and all the other airports that you reference. So other airports, Nashua Airport has no liability requirement. So I appreciate there are some airports requiring it. It's not all of them. And again, the outcome of that will be interesting to see. Let me ask another question. Why do we have insurance? So not to bait you, but the point is, there's got to be a liability. There's going to be a payment somewhere. What is the city's liability, dollar-wise? What could you possibly be sued for? Even if it's not a valid suit, what could you possibly be sued for in a dollar amount?
So my thought process on that is, let's say work was done in an unauthorized hangar, not authorized for maintenance.
So my hangar. As an example, I have a T hangar, so my hangar.
Your hangar.
Yep, okay. just to ground it.
Plane goes up,
Yep,
plane comes down where it shouldn't be.
yep.
And insurance companies are going to point fingers,
Sure.
right? They're going to drag every possible person in they can possibly drag in because people got hurt or worse. They're going to point to the person that had the work done. They're going to point to the person that owns the hangar. They're going to point to the person that allowed the person to go to do maintenance on that airplane in that hangar. And to me, I believe the city of Fitchburg will be culpable of, for some extent, for damages.
What damages?
The death of somebody on the ground or the pilot.
So I don't mean to be crass, but
Yeah.
everything has a dollar amount to it. What is the city's liability, the dollar amount liability for the city?
Well, we have no clue.
Okay.
But we are
So-
being advised for $2 million insurance.
Yeah, what insurance? There's many kinds of insurance. What insurance are we referring to?
It's not specific.
All right, so we can't, so one of the things we want to talk about tonight was the email that went out from the airport manager, Peter, some time ago, requiring this $2 million insurance. We don't even know what it is. It's not specified. So we can't act on it. Same thing in the minimum standards. There's language in there about anything bad happens, you need to have insurance coverage for it. That doesn't exist. There's no such insurance policy that's going to say anything bad that happens. There's a great deal of specificity that's lacking in that document. Now, again, we can go point by point through that. But there's got to be a reason for insurance. If I have an electrician working in my home and they screw up, is the city liable? They could be sued. It's the U.S. Anybody can sue anybody, that's for sure. But are they liable? We have to ask some of these questions. I know it's easier just to say, well, this airport did it, this airport, let's put it in here. It sounds like a good number, it makes me feel good. But feel good isn't the point. The point is it's a business. What is the appropriate amount of insurance if insurance is required at all? And there needs to be some exercise of thought process here with experts in that field, and I appreciate you did get a letter from this person. I don't know them, but that's the right thing to do, is to start dig into this a little bit and find out what it is you're trying to cover. Right? We don't know what it is yet. So, some of the things that we're looking for, and let me
So,
take the... Yes.
can I ask a question?
ma'am.
So,
Please.
if there's damage to a hangar
Yes, sir.
resulting from an uninsured mechanic working on a plane,
Yeah.
and it catches on not just to your hangar, but someone else's as well. How does that work?
So at FACT, we have insurance coverage for the building. So if the building were damaged, we have insurance to cover that and would be rebuilt. We are obligated to the airport and the city to rebuild that hangar within our lease period, return it in good order, and we have the insurance coverage for that. Right.
Well, I wish well, I shouldn't say I wish. The solicitor, we'll have this discussion with him when I can. I mean, this is still a work in progress, I think, obviously. I mean, it's a draft.
Sure.
And we want your input, of course. And,
Thank you.
And we don't want, I certainly don't want to, place a burden on the success of the airport. So we're going to do our best to work on making this palpable for all of us.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, just so you're clear where we're coming from, here's just some of the points that our folks have put together. Our views on the minimum standards, they should reflect the minimum required to qualify aviation service providers. Not the maximum, but the minimum. Standards should encourage both on-field and outside providers, both. Choice and competition promote safety, availability, and quality of service. Extraneous and arduous requirements only reduce that competition and therefore reduce safety, availability, and quality. And quality is, I know most of you appreciate quality is important to our pilots. We're up there flying those things. We care a lot about what goes into those aircraft and how they're maintained. The process, the speed with which you review requests or approvals, if you will, to qualify aviation service providers should be scaled to the level of an activity, an oil change, a flight lesson, the inspection of a certain component. And then keep in mind, we don't necessarily tear the whole plane apart. We might replace one component and bring an inspector in to look at it. Did you do it correctly? Yes, you're approved. It's in your logbook. Off you go. It's an hour-long exercise. Those are very, very different than something like building a full-service FBO or a series of hangars that you're going to rent out that have a ground lease or a full maintenance facility with a ground lease. And the approvals for that should be much different. Our goal is to increase the availability and quality of services available at Fitchburg Airport. We want competition, not policy, and competition breeds excellence, not policy. Sorry, got that backwards. So competition, not policy, will breed excellence in services. Existing on-field service providers are thriving and are specialized, often unable or unwilling to service some of our aircraft and some of our needs. That's a reality we live with. Right? The two folks that are there cannot service all the aircraft, and in some cases will not service the aircraft that are on the field. Safe outcomes are encouraged by allowing the largest number of FAA-qualified service providers both on and off the field. The FAA qualifies A&Ps, IAs, flight instructors, et cetera, and they do a good job at it. Okay? So that's really just the high level of what we're looking for. And there's a lot of documentation from the FAA that supports exactly those points, and I can reference them, but I think I'll bore you to tears with those. We can certainly provide those references for you, but there's a couple of major documents. One is the 5190.6B, Chapter 10, that goes into some of these specifics. Okay. So with regards to, I don't know, I'd like to talk about the email from Peter that came out November 7th. Is now a good time, or is that separate on the agenda?
No,
I don't remember what it was.
what's that? No, it's not. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So with regards to that email that came out, there's no record that we could find in the commission meetings that approved a $2 million insurance policy. Is there such approval from the commission?
No,
Okay, so
it was a recommendation.
Right, which the commission voted on.
I don't know that there was a vote.
Well, my memory says there was.
I don't remember a vote.
We can look into it, but,
we could find no such vote in the meeting minutes. We did peruse the last 2 years of meeting minutes and could not find it.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it was voted on. I think it was agreed to by saying, yes, Peter, we agree $2 million is not crazy.
Yeah, I think,
So is that email valid? It specifies that at that moment, this is a policy, this is enacted, this is,
Well,
applies today, which is, I think, November
I guess
7th.
prior to that moment, a $1 million policy is what was in place.
It was, although never enforced, at least that I'm aware of.
That may be true. I don't know.
Yep. We talked about that a couple months ago, and this is not criticism, I'm not
Yeah.
going there, I'm saying we've done what we've done for the past many decades, right? So
Doesn't make it right.
we're all in favor of getting the minimum standards, there's no pushback on the minimum standards at all. We're just discussing how we get them in the right place.
Yeah.
And putting out a $2 million undefined insurance policy, first of all, nobody can comply with it. We don't know what it is. Secondly, the $2 million number is unobtainable by, again, independent operators. Companies, businesses can get it, but not independent operators. At least according to the information I've had from the insurance companies. They won't write it. So I'm back to wondering whether that email is truly a valid policy at Fitchburg Airport today or not.
Well, it was not voted on by the commission. It's a suggestion by the airport manager.
Okay, so it's a suggestion, it's not an enforceable policy at this point.
I would say without a vote, probably not.
do you have a recollection of when that was that October? When did we have that discussion, the $2 million policy? Because I remember talking about it.
I can tell you it wasn't October because that was first time in a long time I've attended October and November. It was not in either of those two meetings.
I would look into September.
Because if it's not reflected in the minutes, it will be reflected on the recorded commission
Oh, without a doubt.
FATV.
Yeah.
So we can verify, because I don't know if we did vote, but
I don't believe there was a vote.
No vote.
I mean, I'm getting old, but not that old. Yeah, don't
I do
believe
know we talked about it, though. I remember
Oh,
us
that's
talking
good. You're
about
younger
it.
than me.
But, yeah, I don't think we,
The minimum standards would determine that aspect of it. We haven't determined that yet.
Right.
So that would be part of the minimum standards that we agree upon, wouldn't that?
Correct.
And
but
that would be the
Yes.
total vote would encompass
Right.
what we agree upon
I agree.
collaboratively to what the minimum standards are going to say.
Right.
And if it's 2 million or 1 million or $1.50, it's going to be in there, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And we haven't done that yet.
We have not.
Right. Okay.
But there is an email that suggests a $2 million policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to be clear, the email says 2 million is required as of this date. So I'd kindly ask that the airport manager be asked to rescind the email so that people are not operating under that presumption that it's a requirement.
We will consult with the attorney.
Okay.
It may be the airport manager's prerogative. I don't know.
Well, I guess I'd like that clarification, that if the commission is saying that the airport manager is empowered to make those kind of decisions, that wasn't our understanding, but if that's true, we'd like to understand that.
Yeah,
So what I'm getting out tonight is we don't know whether that is a valid email or not a valid email.
I guess that's what you're getting out of tonight.
Okay. So please understand that even if you voted tonight to accept the 2 million, we still don't know what you're asking for. Insurance for what?
We are not voting on minimum standards this evening.
No, I mean specifically on the $2 million
Yeah.
insurance requirement. It's not specified other than just insurance. There's many types of insurance.
Yeah.
And we don't even know what you're insuring against. Okay.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
I don't either.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment on the $2 million?
I don't disagree with that either, with what you're saying, Mr. Esserook.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I do believe $2 million is a good idea, but
I'd love to talk about it. So 2 million, why not 3 or 4? I mean, somebody had 20 million. Why not? It goes back to what I said before. What is it you're trying to get insurance? I mean, you're not going to get, even if you could get it. Take my aircraft, right? So my aircraft was worth about $60,000, $70,000. What's my insurance going to be for? That amount. That's what I could lose, right? I put a bunch of electronics in there. The value went up. I went and got another insurance policy. I didn't insure it for $1 million. I insured it for what it was worth, no more.
well, we at the time, we had justification in which somebody is performing maintenance in a T-hangar environment where it's attached to 7 or 9,
17.
I'm sorry, 17 other hangars with aircraft in them.
Yes.
So I think we did some math at $50,000 times 17, I suppose.
Yep.
And we thought, well, if that was a complete loss, this is what it would come up to.
So we have a problem there, don't you? I mean, what I mean is you have, and Peter's email clarified, I can do maintenance in my hangar all day long. There's no objection to that, correct?
You could work on your own plane, yes.
Yeah, I can work on my own, yeah, not somebody else's, my own aircraft. It is nonsensical to think that I can do an oil change more safely than a trained, experienced A&P. It's nonsensical. I can't. Nobody can. In my aircraft, it's actually fairly funny. It's a Mooney, and there's all sorts of funny stories and blog spaces about good luck if you're trying to change the oil in your Mooney, because you know what happens. It's over here, you can't reach it, and as soon as you untwist it, the oil goes everywhere. So here's a gadget. He'll send you some drawings, take a PVC pipe, cut it in half, get it positioned. Do you really want me changing the oil in my hangar, or do you want somebody who's changed the oil in a Mooney 300 times and knows how to do it without spilling oil on the floor?
I would tend to think I would prefer somebody that knows what they're doing to change the oil.
Me too.
It's the level of liability the city takes on by allowing people, and you know, anyone coming into every one of these hangars and doing things. And I admit we don't know what that level is at this time.
Sure.
You know, asking a broad question to an insurance agent,
Right.
you know what they're going to say.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's other risks here too, right? I mean, we have a lot of aircraft flying around the airport. What's to stop one of our aircraft from landing in the middle of those T-hangars and wiping them out? I mentioned this before in a prior commission meeting. We can't reduce risk to nothing unless we close the airport. You just can't. So there's all sorts of potential risks out there. And yes, we're America, and anybody can sue anybody. That is all true. But a knee-jerk reaction of just putting a number that sounds really comfortable is maybe not the most thoughtful approach. What is the liability? At the end of the day, what is the city liable for? I'm liable to my plane, right? But I have a say in who I have work on my plane, and I'm usually pretty careful about it. I do research. I find out who they worked on before. I care a lot how that's done safely and correctly, because I fly that plane. You can't see that. You're not involved in that discussion.
All right, just to want to be clear and I'm making sure I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. When Peter mentioned the $2 million liability, quick math, $2 million, and we agreed, but not voted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, and exactly why you have votes, so you have an open forum for discussion, so we can have some back and forth before they're
Correct.
approved. So we have a good process, let's follow the process and go where the process takes us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Bill Taylor, representing FPA Coop LLC, a tenant at the airport. I just want to make a quick comment in regards to the minimum standards. I'll be back up later to talk about our issue with the lease, but in response to your question, or Mr. Estabrook's question about what is the liability to the airport, let me first say I'm not an attorney, but it's my understanding that generally under sovereign immunity and Massachusetts general laws, chapter 258, which has limited the liability of a municipality to a maximum of $100,000. So from a liability point of view, it's hard for me to understand why a $2 million liability policy would be required if the maximum exposure to the city under general mass immunity protection laws would be $100,000. So I'd ask the commission to please investigate that with your attorney and consider that point. And in respect, Mr. Chair, to your point about the math of 17 hangars times, $50,000 or whatever, which took you there, again, not to steal Mr. Estabrook's thunder, but he actually answered that question, which is that we all have to have insurance on our buildings for the value of the replacement of those buildings. If there was a loss, including a total loss, there is insurance in place for that, which is independent of any insurance that you're seeking. So it again feels like it's extraneous and needs to be carefully considered before the airport would take action to put in place extraneous requirements that will do nothing other than restrict competition, restrict access to services that you're hearing from the pilots in the community are required for us to safely operate our aircraft. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Peter Hoffman, Berlin, Mass.
Hi, Pete.
I'm a condo owner as well. So I've been thinking about the dialogue that Peter, the chair, and Mark had about whether or not the $2 million policy is enforced. Is it enforced? I'm not sure we got an answer. I chair a board in my town, so I get the other side of the table or the podium where you are, trying to make nice with everyone. But it seems to me that it would be the right thing to do for you to clarify whether it's enforced or not now, as opposed to talk to council. You believe what you believe, which seems to be that it wasn't voted on. If indeed that's the understanding of the entire commission, I suggest, or I'd like to ask that the board or the commission vote on it and confirm that it's not enforced. It'll help Peter know whether or not he should enforce this rule, and it'll clarify it for everyone else, and it won't allow it to be kicked down the road.
So I appreciate your request. As I said earlier, the minimum standards in place is a $1 million, I guess it's vague as well, insurance policy. I don't think it goes into detail. So on the spot, Peter asked to up it to $2 million in the meantime while we were hashing this out. And the board agreed. There was not a vote. And again, I can't tell you if that's kosher or not. I don't know.
So until you know, I'm asking the commission to vote on it. Make a decision. You believe it's in force at the moment, or you believe it's not in force at the moment? I believe you believe it's not in force, but perhaps the commission, I'm reading the commission incorrectly. Have us walk out of here with an understanding of whether Peter should be enforcing that or not, as opposed to you'll speak to council, it'll be pushed down the calendar. As the mayor said, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
you know, the minimum standards haven't been voted on. It'll be incorporated into it. And I would suggest that until it's voted on, minimum standards that is, the insurance requirement should be lifted if it was indeed put in place. And we should go about our business and have the ability to have the mechanics we like on the field.
So if we revert to what was in place, it's $1 million. That's since 1973. The $2 million was not voted on by the commission.
May I suggest that you make a motion that simply reverts back to the way it was until there's clarification or there's a minimum standards in place?
Well, we never made a motion for it to be 2 million to begin with. I think is what Mr. Chair is saying, so it's still the $1 million. Do I have that right, Mr. Chair, or?
That's my thought process.
Right.
Again,
That is mine as well.
Yeah. So I'm not sure,
It's still established at 1 million,
right.
according to the old version of the minimum standards.
So based on that, I don't think
So
it's
that-
necessary to
that's-
make a motion on something we've never made a formal decision on to bump it up to 2 million to begin with, correct?
yes. However,
We've got an email.
People
Peace
in
of
the room
mind, for
are-
peace of mind. I understand, I
are
understand.
under the understanding that
Got
it
it.
is now, from this point forward, $2 million because of the conversation we all had here at this desk.
Understood.
Of Peter suggesting $2 million, in which we were all in agreement on, but did not vote on.
Right.
So I agree. I don't think we need a motion, but
Or a clarification from the chair.
you're getting the
We're getting that.
clarification now is we're going to, what is in place now is the $1 million from 1973.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Make sure that's part of the notes.
I will continue to consult with the attorney to find out if it is Peter's sole decision to move forward with the $2 million. And we may find out that that's the way it is, but again, I'm not a lawyer.
And clarification of what kind of insurance?
Right.
Yeah, we're a ways from that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I don't see that answer coming in the next 2 weeks, but we will work on it.
Will we also find out if that 100,000 maximum exposure liability applies to the situation? I mean, that's a pretty interesting part of Mass law.
Yeah.
I did not know about that.
I mean, that's news to me this evening. I suppose if that gets the city off the hook, then I guess it'll be a different conversation moving forward, but Peter wrote it down. We definitely will look into it.
I think it's pretty important. And it's important for everybody to know in general. I think I remember when that went through some number of years ago.
Yeah. I'm sorry, could you state your name, please?
I'm sorry. Roy Evans, Northborough, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
One other thing that nobody's mentioned, if I might.
Could you please step up to the podium and speak in the microphone? Thank you.
This is really a minor point, I'm sure, but, and I can only speak for the fact hangers. But we are sprinklered at great and enormous, egregious cost to maintain a sprinkler system in buildings 15, 16, and 17. I'm not quite sure about the smaller ones. But this system is enormous. It's piped right into the main water supply at great cost. So I don't see that fire is going to be a huge issue from a liability standpoint, if that should be different and not covered by the 100,000 or, I'm not a lawyer. I just like to fly. I'm just an old guy that likes to fly.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I want to see the airport be successful, and I want to see it encourage young people to get involved. I just read an article today. In order for a young guy who didn't get a good grade on his check ride, which is the very last step of training, it cost him $1,600 to go back and get a second check ride. More hours with the instructor, more takeoffs and landings, and I won't even bother you with the rest of the requirements. But, you know, you need a good, friendly, supportive place to develop these future pilots that are going to be flying you and me to our vacation places that we might want to go. And there's a shortage now, really a huge shortage. And to make it a friendly place for people to do these things is just so important. And it has to be economical. I don't expect the city of Fitchburg to support the airport, except, from a human point of view. I mean, I don't expect Fitchburg to pay for the airport.
Don't worry, they won't.
No, I don't think so. But you get the drift of what I'm doing.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So thank you for your time, and let's see where we get to.
Appreciate it, Roy, thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Mike McCallum from Ashby. I have a plane down at the airport, and I just have a sort of a general question for everybody here. How familiar are you with, like, the details of aviation? Because one of the big issues in the minimum standards is essentially whether independent contractors, sole proprietors, are going to be able to come in and work on planes. If the insurance is raised too much, they won't be able to do it. And so it's important to understand why that's important. Small airplanes are not just all the same. They're all built in different ways. So I have a fiberglass airplane. Some people have wooden airplanes. Some people have steel tube and fabric airplanes. Some people have aluminum airplanes. And then there's subgroups under that. So the mechanics tend to specialize in things. So not every mechanic works on every kind because you need different tools and experience and so on. So if you happen to own a plane that was built out of wood from 80 years ago or something, the guys on the field right now won't work on that because they're not going to take the risk, and they're not going to tool up for it because there's only one or two of them on the field. Some version of that exists throughout everything. I mean, if you own a Cessna, that's okay, but there's a lot of variation in the fleet, and the sole proprietors tend to be guys who specialize. Oh, I work on old Moonies. I work on, Luscombs, or I work on whatever. And so when you set these requirements, what you're doing down the road is saying, we don't want any of those planes at the airport. We don't want any of those planes at the airport. That's the actual outcome. And so when you say, well, Pittsfield has $20 million requirement, that means nobody at Pittsfield is going to be able to get their plane worked on at Pittsfield unless there's somebody there, but there won't be if it's one of these oddball planes, right? And it's not like oddball cars. I mean, the entire output of general aviation planes per year is a really small number. So there's a lot of planes that there's only a few of over the years. So, I mean, I have the only plane of its kind at the airport, right? So there's a lot of those instances. So it's not like Twin Cities, great operation. I don't have any problem with these guys, but they're not going to work on the one of these and one of those and one of those. Because that's not what they do. They do good work on what they work on. So you have to be really careful, I think, of the unintended consequences of your decisions, because there's a real place for the sole proprietors, because they're the only ones who can afford to work on those. But they can't afford to work on them just at Fitchburg. That's why they travel around, because to get enough work, they got to move around. So.
Certainly appreciate your input.
And the other small thing is I was a sole proprietor for years and years, and I did have my major client came to me and said, we need $2 million of insurance. So I went to my insurance guys, and they said, forget it. You can't get it. So I went back to them and said, insurance company said, forget it. And they said, okay, you don't need it. Because they wanted me, so, but in a generalized thing like this, that's probably not going to be the outcome. If you have minimum standards, that's not going to be the way it works. So I'd be really cautious, and maybe you could make different tiers of things, you know. But I would just like to stress the importance of the sole proprietor mechanics in this case, because otherwise you're basically telling people those planes aren't welcome, those planes aren't welcome. And it gets pretty serious, because if a plane, it's not like a car. If a plane, something goes wrong with the plane on the field and it can't be safely flown, then it can't be safely flown. And if there's nobody on the field that can work on it, and there's nobody on the field that can come and work on it, then the plane is stuck. It's just stuck, because you can't legally fly it if it's not legal to fly. It's very regulated. So you can't sort of limp down to the gas station on the corner. You can't move it at all. So it's a lot of unintended consequences here. So you should be cautious. You can get a sign-off for a ferry permit from a mechanic, but it's going to be somebody who knows the plane. So it goes around and around. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on minimum standards? Please.
Short. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Lori Seymour. I live in Waltham, Mass., and I have a little plane at Fitchburg. Most of these guys know me. I seem to be one of a kind amongst the crew behind me.
Quite all
Might be
right.
the shoes. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up that the guys are talking about, but for me, it's human factors. We talk about safety and we talk about liability. So I own a small business and I work for banks. So I know a little bit about needing insurance and a little bit about liability. I work with banking data in particular. So I understand about insurance and liability and independent contractors, which is what I am. Being part of this airport and this group of gentlemen has been amazing. I'm a new plane owner. I bought my plane 2 years ago. I'm a new pilot. I got my license 6 years ago. Because of these gentlemen who have been willing to help me learn, including Peter, I have been able to go from owning a small plane that I'd never owned before and never flown before to flying to Nevada by myself this past summer. So what I'm trying to stress here is that when you start the unintended consequences of not being able to bring independent contractors in, my mechanic is an independent contractor. I do use Twin City. They changed my oil this week, right? But he doesn't have time to do other repairs. He also doesn't have time to teach me. My mechanic, he will come to me if I need him to. I can fly to him if I can. He will also teach me what is important about my plane and what is safe, and what I can do and what I cannot do, or what I shouldn't do, or what I can do when I'm on my own, flying by myself. The folks in the FBO don't always have time to teach you that. My schedule doesn't always allow for me to go from 8 to 5, but I can work with my mechanic on the weekend. He can come to me, or I can go to him. So when you start to put policy on an airport, it's not just, you've got to look at the big picture, like what you're then putting people in the position to consider from a safety perspective. Well, if I can't get the help I need on my airport, am I going to make perhaps a poor decision to fly my plane somewhere else? Will I have to not fly for a long time while I'm waiting in a queue to see the mechanic on the field? Will my practice and my skills degrade because it takes 4 months to get my plane fixed, and therefore I'm not able to practice regularly and I start to become an unsafe pilot and an unsafe decision maker? So as we consider these minimum standards, to many others' points, think about the consequences, because it's not just, in many cases, the economics. It's the pressure that you put on the decision-making and the pressure that you put on people's thinking about the choices that they want to make in order to be good pilots, in order to be responsible aircraft owners. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for speaking. Appreciate it. All right, any more comments on minimum standards at this time? We're going to move on to the next item. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your input. Item E, mass development, Mary Jo, delayed until January meeting, it says right here,
Yes.
so. Table that, make sure it goes in the minutes for next month. Thank you. Item F, tie downs relating to FPA co-op lease, I believe, ongoing. Anything on that, Peter?
No.
RFP, request for proposal, 7 to 9
I
hangar.
had something I wanted to say with respect to the last agenda item.
I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
This is, again, Bill Taylor representing, I'm managing member of the FPA Co-op LLC.
Yep.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm here tonight to discuss some matters in respect to the lease that the FPA Co-op LLC holds with the airport. Recently, after we sent an email to Peter disputing the rental rate increase that the airport began billing FPA Coop, and I was requesting an explanation of the same, we received a letter from the city attorney's office. This letter was not received by us until December the 9th by email, even though it was dated or backdated to April 29th of 2022. In this letter, the city attorney alleges a number of things, including that FPA Co-op LLC is in breach of our lease for having failed to provide certain information to the city in relation to our insurance coverage and in relation to our maintenance fund. I'm happy to report to the commission tonight that no such breach exists in the past or at present. As you know, the FPA Co-op lease has been in effect with the airport since April of 2004. This recently received request from you in the letter that I mentioned comes some 18 years after our lease first went into effect, and this is the first and only time that we have had a request from the city to receive information about our insurance or our maintenance fund. Clearly, if this information was important to the city, we probably should have heard about it before 18 years had gone by. But nonetheless, I have some information for you tonight that I will share on the record in this public meeting to address the questions raised by the letter. Firstly, with regards to insurance, we have always had and presently have insurance on our building, the contents of the building, i.e. the aircraft, any vehicles that we personally operate on the field, and we have insurance for commercial liability. The City of Fitchburg is named on our liability policy as an additional insured. Our present and most recent annual policy has been in place since May of 2022 and expires next May in May of 2023. And we will likely be renewing with that same firm, which is Travelers Insurance, who has been our insurer for a number of years. I have brought copies for the commission of the named insured liability provision so that you may provide this to the city attorney or whoever requires. Turning to the other matter that the city attorney raised in the letter that we recently received, she asked about our hangar maintenance fund. I can report that this fund resides at the Rollstone Bank here in Fitchburg. It is in an interest-bearing savings account, and the present balance of this account is roughly $2,350. So now that I've addressed the questions that the city attorney had for us, I would like to take some time to ask a few questions of the Airport Commission that relate to the city being a party who's actually in breach here of an agreement, which is the breach of our lease, in light of your recent unilateral action to increase our rent charges without justification. Some of these questions that I'm asking you tonight, I have asked via a Freedom of Information Act formal request that I submitted via the instructions at the City of Fitchburg Airport, the City of Fitchburg website. To the extent that the Commission can answer our questions tonight or in follow-up through undertakings, we may consider modifying or rescinding that formal FOIA request, if that's helpful to the city or to the commission. So may I move on to my questions?
Yep.
Who authorized the rent increase that was applied to our bills that started on July 1, 2023?
Commission.
The commission took a vote on this matter?
Yes.
Okay. Just by way of background, before I get to my next question, we are well aware that the FAA has requested the airport to, and I quote, renegotiate being in quotes, leases on the airport that were not charged on a dollar per square foot basis. So other than the request from the FAA to quote-unquote renegotiate, what other authority represents the purported change in law that the Airport Commission via the city attorney claims to exist that justifies a unilateral action of adjusting our rent?
Could you repeat that, please?
I am aware of a letter from the FAA that was a result of a review of the grant assurance requirements for the Fitchburg Airport.
Like 2018 or 17?
I'm not sure of the date. I'm sorry, but I am aware that there was a requirement in that review by the FAA to renegotiate the leases that were not based on a tie-down rate.
Okay.
Right, which would be our lease.
Yeah.
And other than that letter that requested a renegotiation of our lease, what other change in law provision is the city referring to justify the action that you've taken?
From my recollection, your lease hinges upon the lease rate of a tie-down fee, which is no longer valid. That was set forth by the FAA in 2017 or 2018. It's my understanding that over the last few years, we've been trying to start a dialogue with you to renegotiate that lease so that we are in compliance with that 2018 letter. And we have gotten nowhere. So we've referred the action to the attorney's office.
Well, perhaps I could request as an undertaking this 2018 letter, because the one I have, while I don't know the exact date of it, it's certainly not 2018.
Okay.
And that letter that I'm referring to indeed suggested that the FAA suggested that the airport renegotiate the lease. And that's the only document that I've ever seen. And you're correct to say that we were in discussions with Airport Manager Kettle for a renegotiation before, to our surprise, our bookkeeper let us know that our rent had been increased. Mm-hmm. Not because we got any letter, to be clear, but because we got a bill. Yeah. Which took us a couple of months to catch up with the adjusted bill. So we were in the middle of discussions with regards to these matters after admittedly some time, but there was action taken right in the middle of those discussions. So I just trying to understand what got us to today. So again, my request would be if there was a letter or further information from the FAA that you said was dated around 2018, I'd like to request an undertaking to get that information. That request, by the way, was part of the FOIA request that I made formally to the city website.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Among other things that I asked, that was one of them.
Yeah. So you have not received information on that?
That 2018, yeah. Okay, so may I move on to my next question, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Does the commission know what the square footage is of the single building that is owned by FPA Coop LLC that's located at Fitchburg?
I would assume so. I don't know.
Okay, it's approximately 6,000 square feet.
Yeah, you have a land lease, not a building lease, though, right?
We have a a land lease, I'm just saying that the building, my question was in respect to the building.
Oh, okay.
The building that we have on the field is 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay. My next question, are there any other tenants on the field who are paying rent at present for leased land, or sorry, for raw land? And by raw land, I'm referring to land that does not have a building on it, that is not paved or otherwise in use for a taxiway, a private taxiway. So are there any leases on the airport for land that is not in use for a building or for a paved area or for a private taxiway?
The answer's no.
What's that?
The answer's no. There is no other one.
There are land leases on the airport.
Yes, but there's none that has a building on it like Bill's talking about, as land that's vacant. The lease that Mr. Nikitas and also Mr. Taylor signed was a lease for 17,000 square feet of land. And on that land, they built their hangar.
Well, it's not my fault that they didn't build a 17,000 square foot hangar.
No.
So do you know what the FAA is requiring for the square footage lease agreement? Are they talking about the entire, well, I mean, in this point, and I guess it really wouldn't matter whether we're talking about the square footage of the hangar or the land.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. But it has to be derived by square footage from
Exactly.
one way or another.
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe the
So-
letter that
No, the
answer to my question is no.
FACT has a land lease, but they've utilized nearly 100% of the space, I'm thinking.
they do, because the rest is hot top around
Right.
it.
Well, again, I did not get an explanation in the letter that we received, nor have I gotten any other explanation as to how our new rental rate was calculated. It was just simply a bill. But presuming that it is based on 17,000 square feet, a couple comments that I'd like to make on that for the commission to consider. One is that nowhere in our lease at present is rent calculated on a square foot basis. The reference to 17,000 square feet is in the recitals of the lease. A recital is the preamble to the contract. It's not part of the contract, it's a preamble to the contract. There's no provision in the contract at all that refers to 17,000 square feet other than the preamble. So I would just ask the commission to check into what I just said, but that is indeed the fact. Established earlier that our building was 6,000 square feet. If indeed I'm correct that the airport has calculated our rent somehow on the basis of 17,000 square feet, can the commission describe for us where on the airport this remaining 11,000 square feet, 17 minus 6, where is this remaining 17,000 square feet is that we've leased and that we could presumably build a building on? Like, can somebody draw me a picture that says, okay, there's the land that you can build on? Because I'm not aware of it.
Peter would be better.
My
suited to answer that.
understanding is it's the land that's at the back of your current building. That's my understanding.
Well, as an undertaking, could I request a diagram? Doesn't have to be a legal survey, but something that would show me where that land is. And presumably, if I'm going to be charged for it, it would be to the point just made that every other lease has got only land that is usable, meaning there's either a building on it or there's pavement on it. So presumably, the land that we're leasing would be usable for a building.
Again, I don't know what your original lease is derived from. I I don't
Got
know.
the information.
It wasn't square footage at the time, so,
It wasn't square footage at the time, so
Right.
it now magically is, and we're getting
well,
charged.
not magically, it's, we're being demanded to do it this way.
Well, again, we'll see that, I guess, when I see this other letter.
I don't believe there's another letter, Bill. I think it's the one 2008 that was sent to FACT at the same time.
2008?
Yes. When was it, Mark? 18, is it?
I don't know the exact date, but 2008 versus 18.
I did send it to you.
I'm thinking April or something, but, all right.
Mr. Taylor has that.
Okay, so there's two, if it's that same letter, then Peter,
Same letter.
okay, then that one I, for sure is not 18. It must be 2008 if your memory,
I thought it was 2008.
I will check, Peter, if that's the only one, then.
We will check on our end as well.
Okay. But again, Mr. Chair, that letter, if it is indeed what Peter just said, states not that the airport is authorized or commanded or that the FAA has created a new law that says you shall do this. It said, sit down and renegotiate the lease, which is what we were doing with Airport Manager Kettle when we got the revised bill.
That's not the commission's understanding. The commission's understanding is they were running into a roadblock.
Well, the roadblock might have been that we were saying, show us the land that I'm asking you about now. So I'm here tonight, Mr. Chair, to tell you that the questions I'm asking you are questions that I have not been able to get answered
Okay.
by airport management.
Yeah.
Respectfully, I would ask for the commission to provide this information, provide any other basis that the FAA may have. If there isn't any, then I think we're back to the point of renegotiation. I will go on the record with you at this meeting and with the rest of the commission that we are interested in resolving this matter, but doing so on reasonable terms that match the terms of everybody else on the airport, not to be singled out to do something that is not that is not appropriate.
Yep.
My last question, hopefully a simple one, because I see that the agenda that was issued for tonight provides instructions for participants to seek prior authority to participate in the meeting by Zoom. Is that possible for members of the public as well, or members of the airport community? So we can be full participants in this meeting but not be physically present? Is that my understanding?
That holds true today. I don't know if this hybrid situation is going to hold true when they lift the COVID, whatever they call it, protocol.
Okay.
So if that's still going to be possible next month and the next month after that, I can't give you an answer for that.
Okay, well, maybe.
Right now it is.
It is, okay. Well, if I may request, I think I would suggest that, as was the case with Gail tonight, it is convenient. There's important matters being discussed, particularly if we're trying to move along issues like this lease issue that has been, ongoing, unfortunately, for many years. And there's now important matters of minimum standards. It allows more people to participate and not have to be, missing out on the meetings.
You're never missing out on the meetings, though, because they are on demand, that you can always go back and watch as well.
Right, but you can't participate in the sense of providing submissions if there's,
And I don't know how many people we're limited to do that either. We'll try to get you some information.
Yeah, if it's possible, I would request that it be continued because, at least in my own case, I won't be able to participate in January, but at least I would be via Zoom.
Yeah, right.
But not be physically here.
Yeah.
So I would appreciate that, Mr. Chair, if that's allowed.
Yeah, we'll get some clarification on that for sure. We
Okay.
might even be able to do it tonight if we ask Dan.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Could I ask a question? Would it be possible for Mr. Taylor to perhaps provide those questions in writing to the commission? Would that be okay?
Yes, I could absolutely do that, yep, for
Okay.
sure.
I would appreciate that.
I did submit a submission via the FOIA, and there's some questions in there, but I'll re-summarize it for the commission, and I'll provide that to,
You can send it right to Peter.
okay, and then he'll direct it to the commission.
Yes, he will.
Okay, I will do that, thank you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
And it will be helpful to know in advance who is going to attend virtually beforehand, so that way FATV can be properly prepared for that.
Yeah, it sounds like on the agenda that I saw for tonight, that if you wanted to participate remotely, you had to request approval for
Yes,
that
yes.
and in advance and so
Yeah,
on.
so
Yep.
basically, they just need time to get it done.
Yep.
Right.
They don't ask us, can this guy get on or can
Yeah.
that guy get on? It just
It just
happens.
has to happen ahead of time.
But he had
And
time, yeah.
I don't think there's a limited number of people.
Nope.
You
who
don't
can-
think so?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty open. Yep.
Yeah,
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, that was item F. Item G was 7 to 9 hangars agreement. It's kind of in the attorney's hands still. I think Peter wanted to mention something on that. I'm going to give him a second.
Not that I want to jump ahead, Mr. Chair, but the Pete store, I thought that was
I thought that
kind
was
of
done.
tabled,
Yeah.
right? Wasn't it like kind of, didn't we square that away last
We're
month?
waiting for, at last meeting, we're waiting for the attorney to get some clarification on the land lease that we're going to attach to a request for proposal.
Gotcha.
I don't know that it, apparently the attorney's on,
Here he comes.
leave for a couple, 3 weeks, so. Peter, did you have anything to add for item G, the RFP 7 to 9 hangars?
Yes, I do. In discussions with Mr. Sheffels, who's basically the spokesperson for the 7 to 9 people, he sent me an email today after discussing it with him 2 days ago, saying, excuse me, let me just get the letter. Where is it? Peter, per our conversation, I'd like to convey to you that I currently do not have an interest to continue my efforts to respond to a potential request for proposals to construct new hangars at the Fitchburg Airport. As you are aware, I've spent substantial time and effort, $10,000 in site planning, design and ground lease negotiations over the past couple of years. While I believe that we are very close to agreeing on a ground lease that would be market viable and financeable, current economic conditions are such that I do not believe that the scope and magnitude of the project that I've envisioned is economically feasible at this time. Specifically, construction costs and financing expenses have risen dramatically, resulting in a likely price point for the developed hangars that substantially exceeds market demand. As I mentioned to you, I will provide comments on the last draft of the ground lease for your consideration should the Airport Commission choose to reissue the RFP with the amended ground lease as the basis for consideration. And a little in addition to what Eric put down on here, he actually made the statement that he would be glad to help anybody who would want to apply to the RFP and share those drawings that he's had done with everything on it. I mean, he's a good guy. He wants to help.
Yeah.
And I asked him to do this because I thought that the lease was just about ready to go, and I didn't want to hold up the RFP going out so that we could actually develop the land.
Yeah, I mean, it's in my mind set to move forward with an RFP for that, for 7 to 9 hangars, and we have to ask for the 7 to 9 hangars because it's the only way we got permission to go with a 60-year lease.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, we'll just move forward. It's unfortunate that, I guess the unfortunate part is Eric is in the know, and he knows the math, and
He
it doesn't
does.
look good in this
He
climate.
does.
So,
No, it doesn't.
but I still think we should move forward with an RFP for that,
Yeah,
for that land space.
Well, if I may, I'd like to propose for the whole land, and that would include the 45,000 square foot hangar that the guy from Devons wants to, from Hanscom wants to build, and also the 17 T hangars as well, so that we could just send it out and see what the responses are.
Yeah, I guess the part that gets complicated is sending an RFP with a 60-year lease expectation gets a little complicated.
No, that
Just
would
one
do.
person comes with a 145,000.
No,
square
that's
foot.
true.
Yeah.
So it would have to be done separately.
It probably
Yeah.
would.
It would. It would.
So, all right, well, thank you for that, and we'll keep it on the agenda. Still trying to get some clarification on some 2 or 3 sentences, and we'd like to move forward with that, because it's going to, well, it's all, you know, the minimum standards, well, I guess the minimum standards which are in place now are going to have to hold true if we're going to go with that RFP before minimum standards are agreed to, or new ones, I should say. Okay. Item H, the Pete's Store.
Yeah, and Jay, H and I, we can actually, we're waiting for the approval by the FAA on the land.
Yeah, H and I, yeah, which is eminent.
Yes.
Item J, Mr. Dyke.
Yes, that is with HR at the moment. I sent a letter, as I was advised at the last meeting.
Okay.
I'm waiting for a response.
Financial review, approval of commitments and abatements.
None tonight.
Executive session is a no. That has to be announced prior anyways, but date and time of next regular meeting is January 18th, 2023, 6 PM here at the Legislative Building, Main Street, Fitchburg. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
There you go.
7:34. Thank you very much.
Peter, can I
Adjourn.
see that email?